All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is hosted by Farm to Institution New England. My name is Caitlin Haskins and I'm the Communications Manager for FINE. Today's webinar is titled Local Food for Campus Dining, Stats and Stories. In just a minute, you'll hear from Peter Allison about the plan for today. But for now, I just wanted to walk you through a couple of features you can take advantage of while you're in the webinar today. One is the chat functionality. So you'll see in your Zoom toolbar an option to chat. You're welcome to send a message anytime during the webinar to everyone who's participating, or just to the panelists or to individual panelists. And we'll try to respond either throughout the webinar or follow up with you afterward. Another option is the Q&A feature. You'll also find this in your black Zoom toolbar. So again, throughout, you're welcome to put your questions in there, and at the very end of the webinar, we'll have a chance to respond to those questions. So throughout, if you have a question for a particular panelist, feel free to address it to them directly, or if you have a general question, we're happy to take those as well. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce to you our speakers today. First off, we've got Peter Allison, who's the Network Director for FINE. Next up, you'll hear from Nessa Richmond, who's our Metrics and Development Manager. And then you'll hear from a couple of people who are working in colleges, one up in Maine and one in Rhode Island. Their names are Jenny MacArthur, who works at Unity College, and Stephanie Keith, who's down at Roger Williams University in Rhode Island. You'll hear from them about what's happening in their campus dining world, and how they can apply what we've found in our research to their work. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Peter Allison. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Caitlin, and hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. Just to give you a little bit of an outline, building on Caitlin's remarks, and then we'll get right into it. I'll share a little bit about FINE and why we're focused on the farm to campus sector. And then Nessa will tell you briefly about our farm to institution metrics project broadly, with a key focus on our new report related to the campus dining survey that we conducted in the last year, and some of the highlights from that report, as well as how to access more information about it. And then, as Caitlin mentioned, we'll hear two really exciting case studies from Roger Williams and Unity from Stephanie and Jenny. And we'll follow up with some brief ways that folks can get involved in some of the initiatives going on in the region, and then turn it over to you for questions and answers from the panelists. And as Caitlin mentioned, you can go ahead and put questions in the question bar at any time, and then we'll pick those and direct them to the panelists at the end, and we'll be wrapping up by 2:15 at the latest. So just very briefly, we want to let you know about the Farm to Institution New England FINE network, and in particular, the Farm and Sea to Campus programs that we've been working with many other partners on for the last several years. Our mission at FINE is the ambitious mission to mobilize the power of institutions to transform our food system. We really recognize tremendous opportunity within the institutional sector on a number of fronts, and we recognize the tremendous network of organizations and businesses and agencies and institutions themselves that are involved in this type of work. Specifically, we're focusing on that in order to support sustainable farms and food businesses in our region, make sure we're getting affordable, healthy food to all institutional consumers across the region, and provide good jobs along the supply chain in the course of doing that work. Just briefly, I think most of you probably understand the reason that we're focusing on the institutional sector. But for us, we feel it's really important to clarify that the institutions provide, in some cases, a new or at least a diversified and stable market for many of the suppliers, fishermen, women, and farmers in the region. Institutions serve a lot of people. About 3.8 million folks a year are eating at institutions in New England, which is almost 1/4 of the population of our region. We're seeing increasing demand from institutions for local food, demand from their customers, their staff, their constituencies. And so as Nessa will describe in much greater detail, right now they're buying collectively on average about 16% local food. And interestingly and importantly, we're seeing a tremendous interest in buying more local food in the future. So institutions represent a really great opportunity to get local sustainable food to the folks here in our region. And the reason we're focusing on a regional basis is that in New England, we have many more producers up north and many more consumers down south. The food production is happening in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, primarily, although very important seafood and farm enterprises throughout the whole region. And the largest population base are in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. But of course, also very important populations up north as well. But moreover, there's a real shared history and culture in New England, which creates a great foundation for collaboration to address these issues. So we're focusing on institutions, we're focusing on New England, although the implications for our work reach beyond those two particulars. The way we go about our work is we kind of put our work into 3 broad buckets, where we're very much focused on connecting and convening and communicating with our constituency through a whole bunch of different mechanisms, digital and in-person meetings and forums like today. We're also really working to align those folks around particular strategies in the supply chain that we've identified that are most important for effort. And then finally, to work with that network to catalyze action, to really create change and impact that's measurable within the institutional sector here in the region. So just a few of the things that we're doing that I want to share before jumping in. We're launching a brand new initiative called Campus FOODSHIFT, which is, we're really working essentially to transform the college and university campus food culture in New England over the next 5 to 10 years by getting them to help to increase the amount of local food they're procuring, as well as build informed and active campus communities committed to these values in their educational mission, and generally to be participating in our regional food system in a very intentional way. So we'll be working to map all the campuses across the region this year, gathering much more information on them, thinking about the best ways to help leverage change, and then figuring out how we can support a variety of technical assistance providers and partners to help bring that expertise to new campuses like the ones you're hearing from today to create really meaningful change. And then just briefly, a couple other things. We have developed over the last several years a food service toolkit, which is a very extensive resource. You can find information on it, and we'll be building more onto it this year. It really helps stakeholders understand the issues related to RFPs and contracts between food service management companies and the institutional sectors they serve, in order to help incorporate more local and regional sustainable food values into those food operations. So we'll be telling you more about that through our communications in the near future. And then finally, wanted to direct you to a whole suite of case studies that we've developed related to campuses that you can find on our website. So similar to the two that we'll be sharing through the webinar today, we've pulled together information on campuses through a number of means over the past several years under the leadership of our Farm and Seed Campus coordinators, Riley Neugebauer and Simca Horowitz, who works in the Southern New England, as well as the steering committee for the Farm and Seed Campus Network, which we'll talk about at the very end. So I just wanted to share those three things. And then at this point, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Nessa, who's going to give you an introduction to our metrics project, and in particular, the new report we've developed on Farm to Campus. So Nessa, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Peter. It's great to see so many of you have taken the time out to join us today. And I'm excited to tell you a bit about our metrics project and then to dive deeply into the findings that we analyzed out of our Farm to College survey. So we're really, FINE decided to take on the metrics project because we believe that having this data is essential to understanding the system, and that understanding the system is a key to changing it. And really what we're trying to do is track progress so we can all inform our plans in a data-based way. You can go ahead and forward, Caitlin. Getting the data together is really essential, but if we didn't communicate it properly, it wouldn't be very valuable. So we have a very strong focus on being transparent and getting the information out there. And the primary tool that we have developed to do that is our online dashboard, which you can see here. It's at dashboard.farmtoinstitution.org. And this is where you can look at highlights in a very kind of graphic way for the different sectors and across the supply chain. It's also where you can go to find out what our new announcements are and to download some of our other resources. So for instance, the Farm to College survey that we're presenting on today is also a 30-page in-depth research report. We also have a research report about distributors that you can download from here. And in addition, we have state profiles for each of the 6 New England states. In the near future, we're also going to be publishing a survey on our report on our producer survey and a cross-sector infographic. So if you want to know about those when they're published, you can sign up for FINE's newsletter. And you can go ahead, Caitlin, thanks. So what I want to do is just give you a sense of where we're getting our data before we dive in. We are focusing on our 2015 college dining survey today, which, as you can see, got a 50% response rate. But across the metrics project, we're gathering data from a number of different secondary and primary sources. You can see at the bottom of the slide here, we say that all data presented comes from surveys, is self-reported, and may conflict with other data sources. So that means, really what we can talk about with confidence is the folks who answered the survey. We can't always extrapolate and talk about full populations. Although with the Farm to College survey with a 50% response rate, we can probably say things about populations more easily than we can about some of the other surveys that may have had, a significantly lower response rate. So this survey was implemented in July to September of 2015, and it had 25 questions. If you go to the dashboard, you can actually download the survey research tool and the data set itself, cleaned and with identifiers removed. So what I want to do next is just kind of paint a picture of the total institutional market in New England. There are 4,628 schools in New England, that's K through 12 schools, 210 colleges and universities that provide dining services, and 256 hospitals. According to the US Census of Agriculture in 2012, there were 34,877 farms across the 6 New England states. And of course, most of those, as we know, are small farms. This is a look across the 3 sectors that FINE focuses on, K through 12 schools, colleges and universities, and hospitals, of the average percent of the total food budget spent on local food. So you can see that it's 15% of K through 12 schools, 21% of colleges and universities, and 13% of hospital budgets spent on local food. And I also want to say before we move on that we're going to talk a little bit later about exactly what colleges mean when they say local. And also to point out or just reiterate what Peter said earlier, that across all three of these sectors and across the supply chain, there's a lot of interest in buying more local food in the future. For example, 70% of K through 12 school districts said they're going to buy more local food in the future. And fully 98% of colleges and universities said that they're going to be increasing their local food buying over the next 3 years. So next, I want to look at the total amount spent on local food by surveyed institutions. For the K through 12 schools, this was $44 million. For the colleges and universities, it was $57 million. And for the hospitals, it was $9 million. And I want to just reiterate the point that these are totals just from the surveyed populations. So they are most likely lower than the totals themselves across the full population. And now what I want to do is take a deeper dive into what we learned in our campus dining survey. I'm going to be providing highlights, and of course you can read in a lot more depth by downloading the survey research report, or even looking at the data itself. So FINE developed this survey of dining services, which includes community colleges across the 6 New England states, really in order to explore different perspectives on bringing local food to college campuses, to identify the challenges they face and the opportunities they see in developing local food programs. And at the same time, we wanted to establish a baseline of procurement in New England colleges. And this, again, this was for their 2014-2015 fiscal year. So we want to be able to, compare over time and show progress, hopefully, over time. This first slide is showing our survey responses by state. You can see that Massachusetts had the highest number of colleges respond, although it had one of the lower percent since there are so many schools there. And that Vermont won the contest for percent responding. They got all of their schools to respond. "95% of the schools overall that responded to the survey said that they do currently purchase local food. So in looking at the responding colleges by food budget, you can see that the largest percent were under 500,000, and 16% were $5 million or more. This is their annual food budget. So the average annual food budget, I think overall, was actually $3.1 million. And I want to just point out here that we asked them about their most recent fiscal year. Because schools have different fiscal years, they were answering about slightly different time frames, but that shouldn't make too much of a difference in terms of the overall data. Survey respondents served a total of over 65.3 million meals per year. And you can see here how that broke down. So the dark green piece of pie is showing you the percent that served less than 150,000 meals per year, while at the other end of the spectrum, the blue piece of pie is showing you that 21% served 1 million or more meals per year. The average was 7,466 meals per day. I think what we found was that almost 3/4 of the students attending these colleges were on a meal plan, and that represented over 151,000 students overall. So we then asked them about their primary operating structure for their dining services. And you can see here that 27% reported that they were self-operated, and that the remaining 73% said that they were operated by food service management companies, with 34% using Sodexo. And you can see the breakdown there of the others. So now I want to get back to that question of what local really means to our respondents. We allowed them to define this term themselves, and you can see that 29% said within a 250-mile radius, 28% said local means in my state, and 26% said within New England. One of the most, I think, interesting and telling slides is this one representing how New England colleges track local food purchasing. You can see here that about a third of responding colleges don't use any tools to track purchases of local food. So in a sense, this throws some of the other findings into question. If they're not tracking, then how are they making their estimates? We think it's really important to point this out and point out the importance of tracking to really understanding what our baseline is. You can see here that 32% are using distributor reports and 21% using customized tracking tools, and on down the list. So as I said, all but 5 of the universities and colleges reported that they purchased local food for their food services, and they averaged 21.1% of their total food budget spent on local food, and that responding colleges spent a total of almost $57 million on local food for the year that we asked about. Local food purchases ranged from one school that reported $250 for that year in local food purchases, and another that reported $7.4 million for that year. So a big range there. Another really important piece that we want to point out that we found from the survey was that schools with self-operated dining services tend to spend more on local food on average. This was a statistically significant difference in the percent of the budget. So you can see that those schools operated by food service management companies spent 17.9% of their total food budget on local food on average, where the self-operated schools spent 27.5% of their total food budget on local food. This slide is showing you both the amount spent by state, which is the blue bar, and the percent spent by state, which is the green square. I think it's important to show this because you can see that although, you know, Massachusetts is spending a lot, it's a relatively small percentage of their total that they're spending, whereas while Vermont might be spending a small amount, it's an awful big percentage in comparison to the other states. And this is just a slide giving you a little bit finer breakdown of the information about plans to buy more local in the future. You can see that 98% who want to spend more break down into 62% who want to increase their purchasing of local food somewhat, and 36% who say they want to increase their local food purchasing significantly. And that was over the next 3 years. Colleges buy local food from several different sources. This is an average again from our survey. They purchase from an average of 3 producers directly, 1 producer cooperative, and 2 local food processors. We also asked them what about their top local food products by value. So basically we asked the schools to list their top 5 local food, types of local food that they purchase by value. And you can see here that apples top the list. 47% of colleges said that apples are in their top 5. Milk, of course, presents its own type of distribution issues, but it's good to note that 33% were reporting that to be local. Since we allowed them to fill in the type of product, some of them just said produce in general, while others broke it down. There's a lot more detailed data on this information in the report. We also asked schools, what are the products that are most difficult for you to source locally? Specifically, we asked them about their experience sourcing these products from different product categories. So you can see that protein is really high up there. Poultry, 43% said that's one of their most difficult products. 39% put in meat as an overall category, while 27% cited eggs. You can also see where there aren't a lot of barriers to sourcing locally, specifically around fruits and vegetables. And finally, for the purpose of just highlighting the top level information here, we asked about top barriers to getting local food to colleges. What do they see as the barriers they're facing? 86% cited lack of year-round supply. 82% cited high price point. 71% said there was a lack of sufficient volume and variety. And 69% said there was a lack of locally processed foods. So what I'd like to do now is to introduce our case studies, which I'm really excited about. And our first case study is going to be Stephanie Keith speaking. She is the market manager for Bon Appetit at Roger Williams University in Rhode Island.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Nessa. My name is Stephanie Keith. I am the marketing manager and controller here at Roger Williams University in Bristol, Rhode Island. So I'm just going to kind of run through some of our key characteristics of our dining program and how we purchase local food. So this slide is just a quick overview of what the operation is here at Roger Williams. We are a contracted food service through Bon Appetit Management Company. On campus, we have 2 all-you-care-to-eat dining halls. We have 7 retail cafes, one of those which is off campus, and we also have a full catering department. Our total food budget for the year is about $5.3 million. On the meal plan this year, we have almost 3,100 students that are currently on the meal plan. So with that, we do serve almost 1 million residential meals per year. We do about 500,000 meals in retail in our retail cafes, and then we do a little bit over 100,000 meals through catering. So why do we have a local food program? So first and foremost, we as Roger Williams and we as Bon Appetit, we know that when we purchase local, we are getting the freshest, produce, food ingredients that we can. We're supporting our local businesses, local farmers, local fishermen, and then even beyond that, our support of local food and supporting our local economy it's in alignment with our university's core values. So Roger Williams has a strong sustainability program, and with that, Bon Appetit and the university have a great partnership where we have similar sustainability initiatives, and with that, we are able to support recruitment, help enrollment, and keep retention of our students. Go to the next slide. All right, so how do we define local? Bon Appetit as a company has a pretty strict definition of what local is. So any of that we consider our farm to fork vendors they're within 150 miles from the university. They also have to be under $5 million in revenue. So that does keep us, especially being on the coast, it does kind of limit our reach of local vendors. And then tracking, we have a custom tracking in-house program which is done through GL coding of those approved farm to fork vendors, and it's tracked on a weekly basis. All right, so like I said, well, the goal, our company-wide goal is to purchase at least 20% of our total food budget on local purchases. We are very proud to say that our last academic year, we actually did 24.5% of our total food purchases on local, which equals just about $1.3 million in local goods. Our goal for the future years to come, we are hoping to hit just about 30% in local. A big way we're going to drive that increase is through supporting a more plant-based approach in our residential and retail cafes. So with that, we'll have a lot more produce purchases. So these, on this slide, you'll see our major vendors for local foods. Market Mobile was a great success for us. Up until we started using them 4 or 5 years ago, it was a challenge for us to efficiently connect with small local farms. It was hard for us we could identify the farmers that had what we needed, but it was difficult for either us to go get those items, those ingredients, or for the small farmer to bring them to us. So Market Mobile has really been able to solve a lot of that issue as being a local Rhode Island food hub, and sourcing the local ingredients and allowing our chefs to go online, choose what we need, what's available, and then delivering it directly to Roger Williams. All right, so what is hard to source? Our list was pretty close to what you saw earlier in this presentation. So our challenges, which was also a high percentage of the responses, is just the harvest season in New England. And we have a very high demand. We serve a lot of students, a lot of guests. We serve over 6,500 meals per day. And it's a challenge to be able to source as much locally as we'd like to provide all of those meals. But we have had a lot of successes. Rhody Fresh, when Bon Appetit first started at Roger Williams University about 10 years ago, Rhody Fresh was a struggling dairy co-op, and we're very proud to say that we made a commitment to purchase all of our dairy and milk through Rhody Fresh, which gave them a great step forward in becoming the company that they are today. Our local French fries, all of our cafes hand cut potatoes for our French fries. At the beginning of that program, the farm that we use, Lacerda's farm in, I believe, Middletown, Rhode Island, was only able to get us through, maybe the first semester with their potatoes. But as the demand grew and they were able to plan for our needs, they now can get us through with enough potatoes for pretty much through commencement, through the whole academic year. And then tomatoes. So we have a great farm to fork partner in Ashford, Connecticut, called Horse Listener's Orchard. And Matt Cousins, who runs that farm, has been able to part with many Bon Appetit cafes in the Rhode Island, Connecticut area to grow enough tomatoes for us to make marinara sauce for the entire year. So all of our tomato sauce is local, and it's been a wonderful partnership with him and the planning process to be able to accommodate such a heavy need, but it's been a great partnership with horse listeners. So campus farms, we have a few smaller projects on campus. We do have a student-run garden. It's a small garden that has been traditionally run by work-study students over the spring and summer. So we have seen a few successes through there, some tomatoes, eggplants, and herbs. We also have, a couple years ago, some architecture students created a group on campus that was one into edible landscaping on campus, and then also wanted to build and has built a geodome on campus, a small geodome to produce produce year-round. We've also just started a partnership with Mount Hope Farm, which is just a mile away from campus, to use their greenhouse on the farm, along with Matt Cousins from Horse Listeners Orchard, to grow year-round produce through there, and we've made a commitment to purchase as much from the greenhouse as we can. So looking ahead, so we're definitely going to continue supporting all of our farm to fork vendors. We'd like to increase our local purchases, like I said, hopefully to 30%, which is going to be largely due to increasing our plant-based menu items. We're continually developing our seasonal menu plans and trying to take advantage of everything that we can get locally and seasonally. Sea vegetables has really made a mark lately. So we would like to start utilizing seaweeds and kelp more in our menu options. And then implementing more underutilized local sea species. Our chef here is very in tune with the local aquaculture in Rhode Island, and he's made great strides in using underutilized seafood in our cafes. So that is what Roger Williams has ahead.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Just clearly a lot of really exciting stuff going on at Roger Williams. And just a quick note before we move on to the next case study, that you can, as I said, if you'd like, put your questions into the question box or just jot them down so you can ask our presenters what's on your mind after the presentation is over. We're looking forward to that piece as well. So moving on to our second case study, we'll be speaking with Jenny MacArthur, who's the Assistant Director of Dining Services at Unity College in Maine.
And this is Peter, not Jenny. Jenny just put a message to the panelists that her phone just died. So she's going to call back in. Stephanie, I have actually a question for you in the interim, which is, with the work you've done you've done all this great work on campus, and I'm wondering what the reaction from the students and staff who are eating the food is. In particular, as you're moving away from some of the meat in the center of the plate to more plant-based and seafood. What kind of reaction are you getting from the students and from the staff and other customers?
We've had amazing reactions and comments from all of our guests, students, faculty, staff. We have a really involved student base, or it's becoming a lot more involved and more aware of what they're eating, where their food is coming from. So we have great groups. We have the Food Recovery Network is on campus. Like I said, those architecture students who came to us with this edible landscaping project, and the Eco Dome. So it's definitely a growing just something that our students are just well aware of, and we're happy that we can work with them and grow the program for all of the Roger Williams community.
Great, and Jenny is back on, so welcome back.
Isn't that great timing? I'm so sorry.
And go ahead and reintroduce yourself and in your role at Unity, if you would.
Sure. So I'm Jenny MacArthur. I'm the Assistant Director of Dining here at Unity College, and my role is a relatively new one. I've been here just under a year. So this whole area has been pretty new for me. I moved back here from Arizona, so getting back into local New England has been a pretty fantastic adventure. Unity College Dining Services has partnered with the Sustainability Department and the Farm Management team. So we all report to the Chief Officer of Sustainability, and I believe at this time we're still the only college that has such a designation. So that makes it even more important for us to make these commitments, especially in line with the college's mission. The mission of Unity College is through the framework of sustainability science. Unity College provides a liberal arts education that emphasizes the environment and natural resources. Through experiential and collaborative learning, our graduates emerge as responsible citizens, environmental stewards, and visionary leaders. And while they're nourishing their minds in class, we're nourishing their bodies here on campus. We have three major three campus dining facilities. Our main dining hall, which is Wyman Commons. We have the Student Center Cafe, and then we have a catering and concessions department. We have just under 600 students currently on the meal plan, and approximately 372,000 meals we serve in a year. And our dining services budget is under $1 million. Currently this year, we made a commitment to allocate $20,000 in funds to our on-campus farm. So we make direct purchases from them. We are self-managed, so that makes it a little bit easier for us to see. We define local by using two different standards. So we use the Real Food Challenge and align that Real Food Challenge with the ASHI stars, and we use their sustainability tracking and assessment rating system so that we can track those numbers. And we also run the numbers for the NACF standard and our personal commitment. So basically, we track all of our local purchases, and we use the Get Real, Get Mean slogan by supporting anything that is produced or created in our state. We also support our local food hub and our own farm, and we look to our neighbors to purchase regionally before we seek alternate purchasing sources. So hopefully, if there's something in New Hampshire that we can purchase before we would make that commitment, before we would purchase it from Idaho or California. You can go ahead for me. Perfect. So we make those connections in two different ways. And one is community outreach, not just to our farm, but our local farmers here in the area. We use the Unity Food Hub, which is growing and expanding quite rapidly. We use other local co-ops in the northern part of the state, and there's another one close to us regionally in Belfast. And we're starting some collaborative purchasing efforts with neighboring institutions that are also self-managed to help leverage some of our buying power. We did work on creating a new contract around the requirement for local so that if we can purchase it outside of our 80-20 agreement, that local and sustainable acquisition supersedes that. So we have the ability to go outside of our preferred vendor if we can purchase something that's local or sustainable. And we have challenged our main supplier to aid us in managing the balance between the Real Food Challenge goals and our NACF standards, and we really put the pressure on them to help us collect more clear and concise data. A lot of times the problem with collecting those Real Food Challenge goals is that it's a student that's managing that, and then the student graduates or the student gets another job. And so unfortunately at that point we don't have the ability to continue moving forward. So then somebody has to pick that ball up. So we've challenged our suppliers to help us running reports and data to help manage those goals. The sourcing that we do, it's really hard for us to get local meats on a regular basis aside from ground beef. All the ground beef that we use is local. Chicken, I should say prices, I apologize. Chicken prices are a little bit high, and beef availability is scarce outside of ground beef. Our needs deplete the local supply chains pretty fast. We're not a very huge institution in comparison with Roger Williams, but we definitely deplete our sources quite quickly. Sustainable seafood programs are also an issue for us because they're for bigger shoppers. And we're hoping that by leveraging our buying power with other local institutions, we can get in on some of those larger sustainable seafood programs going forward. The main growing season and the availability of storage and freezer space and the closing down of Northern Grill definitely damaged our local vegetable purchases. But fortunately for us, we have our own farm, and my department and the farm management team work very closely together to produce to meet our needs here in the dining facilities. We purchased just over 3,500 pounds of food, or projected to purchase that amount throughout the school year, and a lot of that is leafy greens. So if you're sitting in a swimming pool of lettuce, that's kind of Olympic-sized swimming pool of lettuce, that's probably what we're looking at. My staff contributes their time working at the farm, so that makes a really sort of full circle moment when they're helping plant seeds and pull weeds and then serving that produce here in the dining hall. And the students here on campus work at the farm. They're doing research projects. Student workers are practicing with customer service and tending to the seedlings, the crops, and the harvest. So it's all part of their sustainable agriculture education, or other students that just choose to work there on their own. We're hoping to further develop partnerships again with our neighbors, because we've looked at regionally and there's several other institutions close to us that have missions in sustainability and local purchasing. Hudson University is one, College of the Atlantic is one, Eastern Maine Community College, Kennebec Valley Community College, and all of us together are hoping to leverage our buying power and to start meetings with each other to share our best practices so that we can not just exchange information and ideas, but do things that are harder for self-ops to take care of, like big volumes of buying power. We're continuing to lean on our suppliers and demand more local and sustainable products from them. So when you're going to food shows and when you're talking to your vendors, it's super important to have those big discussions about products that are sustainable and to educate them. And we're hopefully taking a big step forward in doing that on a regular basis. We're hoping to increase our networking circle throughout New England to broaden our awareness of regionally available products so that we can source those before we make national purchases. Recently, we attended the farm meeting here in New England, and we were also part of the FINE conference, and so we got to meet folks from other areas and share and exchange information about products that they have for sale that we can ask our suppliers to purchase for us.
Thank you so much, Jenny and Stephanie. Those are great presentations, and we have some questions that we'll be asking for you guys in just a minute. Before that, and if others of you who are listening have other questions you want to put in the question and answer box, please do so. Let me just talk briefly about some of the opportunities that are coming up around the region for folks to get more involved and how you can get more information, and then we'll go to the questions and answers before wrapping up. So one of the things is that FINE has launched a Farm and City Campus network, in New England, which has been led by Riley Neugebauer and Simca Horowitz, and a great steering committee of folks from around the region. And they've developed 4 different working groups around different strategies. And you can see the website there to get more information. We've really created an opportunity for people to participate in monthly calls, listservs, and other means to share information around some critical components. I think the next slide describes those working groups. Yeah, so there's one on supply chain development, communications and outreach, metrics and tracking, some of what Jenny and Stephanie have been talking about, and then education and engagement, so including the faculty and students. So there's active work groups here that are each sort of identifying key issues within those subject areas and developing some project ideas and structure to work on those. And so there's a lot that's happening and a lot of opportunity, and you can see the link there to learn more about the working groups and to sign up. So encourage you to take a look at that site there on our website. Just yesterday, we launched the brand new newsletter for campuses. The most recent one featured a couple of really great case studies and some other information. Peggy Briggs is the person who's the lead of the communications working group, and you can contact her if you have ideas about something you want to share about your campus effort, or a question or a strategy that you'd like to pursue more. So it's a great opportunity to get information, but also to share your information back with the broader network. And FINE more broadly has developed with the working group, has developed a listserv for those working on campus farms and gardens. And so there's an opportunity to get connected with others who are doing that kind of work. We've also created a food system educator and research directory, where if you are doing research or leading classes on food systems work at universities within New England or beyond, it's an opportunity to put your information into the directory and connect with other researchers in the field. We've actually had experiences where faculty up in Vermont didn't know about a new initiative down in Rhode Island, and so this is one mechanism to try and help make that sort of information more available and accessible. As I mentioned, the opportunity to share information through the website and the newsletter, and you can submit your information at that campus@affirmedinstitution.org link. And at www.affirmedinstitution.org, there's an opportunity to share your success stories, and we'll help get them back out to folks around the region. And that's about it. So we've got a couple of questions here. The first one is from Audrey, and it's for, I believe it's for Nessa, asking, regarding the 21% of college food budgets spent on local food, is that an average based on different colleges' fiscal year budgets, or is it based on sample months, which is the way Real Food Challenge does it? I wonder, because local food is more available in months like September than, say, February. Nessa, do you want to respond to that one?
Sure. Yeah, we asked them to estimate their local purchases for their fiscal year, for the 12-month period, and we did not ask them to break it down by month. So all of them should be answering based on totals across all 12 months. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Nessa. Right, and so that is very different than, for example, how Jenny mentioned about using the Real Food Challenge, which typically just takes a couple months because of the incredible work it takes for the students to gather that information. Here's another question from Nicole Teichner for both Stephanie and Jenny. Could you share a little bit more about how and whether software or IT platforms support your tracking of local food? Stephanie, you mentioned the GL coding of approved vendors as an example. she's currently trying to figure out how to implement automated tracking at their institution, which is also a self-op. So do either of you want to comment a little bit more about whether you're using any software or IT, and more broadly, how you are going about the process of tracking your local food procurement?
Sure, this is Stephanie. So with being a contracted food service company, we have an accounts payable system where we have to run through all of our invoices, which have to be coded to correctly represent if it's a meat purchase, if it's a produce purchase. But then we also have the separate GL codes to recognize those farm to fork local purchases. And then through that, I just on my own use an Excel spreadsheet to track our total purchases for the week, and then what the total local purchases were by location. So that's how we do it here. We don't use any sort of IT or software to help track that.
At Unity, we don't use any IT or tracking software either. We have a student worker that codes the local on all of our invoices. And then we run a report based on purchases that we've selected to have highlighted through our food representative. They actually have that report built out, so it spits out the volumes of what we've purchased that we've chosen to have run through that report.
Great. Jenny, I didn't know there was another question for you. You mentioned that the sustainable seafood's an area you're interested in focusing on more, but that in some ways it's only available to bigger shoppers or bigger markets. I just wonder if you could expand on that a little bit.
There's sustainable seafood purchasing programs through companies like Red's Best, and you have to commit, like if you want to participate in the Catch of the Day program, you have to commit on certain levels, certain dollar amounts. And for the size of the institution that we are, we can't meet the needs of the financial needs of committing to those programs to be able to participate in the levels of seafood that we would want to purchase. So on the top level, you have to commit to, I want to say it's like 100,000 pounds as part of the program, and then they ship it to you. And you don't really get to choose as part of that Catch of the Day program, but we couldn't use that much seafood. I mean, everyone would have to eat seafood for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all year long to make that kind of commitment. So we're hoping to partner up with some local colleges and maybe be able to hit that top tier of the Red's Best program or something similar to be able to make that commitment.
I got it. Thank you. Stephanie, at Bon Appetit and Roger Williams, you've defined local as 150 miles or less than 5 million for your farm to fork program. Is that something that you guys set up, or is that a Bon Appetit standard, or were there students involved in helping to set that criteria?
That is a Bon Appetit standard. So anybody who we are going to submit as a possible farm to fork partner, they have to be, within 150 miles from the university, under 5 million, and then there are even beyond that. There are further qualifications for, say, bakery, like 50% of a baked good has to be sourced locally. So then it does get even more specific as you look at what type of local item you'd like to have approved as farm to fork.
Got it. Thank you. And lastly, I'd just like to ask both of you, or maybe not lastly, but one other question is, to what extent does the food service interact with either the students or student groups or faculty? I know Jenny, you mentioned that students had been involved in tracking the local food, but do you find that there's other student groups that are focused on sustainable food or local food, or are there faculty that have any kind of connection with the campus dining operations?
We have a sustainable agriculture program here on campus, so we have a lot of students and staff and faculty that are very involved in the food chain, if you will. We also have a focus group, a dining focus group that we meet with on a monthly basis. We also work with student government, so we discuss, we have a day where we go to one of their community meetings and discuss dining with student government, and then we also do surveys, so the students can, access the information and we can process that to write menus generated based on their desires.
Great, thank you. How about down at Roger Williams?
So yeah, we have a great relationship with our students. We have an awesome food committee group here that meets 2 or 3 times a semester. And the main idea behind the meeting is, to go over the normal, what's good, what do you have any, qualms about, but then also there's a sustainability topic for each meeting. So it's a chance for the students to learn what's going on, what are concerns in the food industry, but then to also kind of voice their opinions and their ideas. Then we also have, we have eco reps on campus that we're very close with. Like I said, the Food Recovery Network is a group of really involved students. And then it's, we have a pretty small management team here, but we have a lot of great, cooks and service employees. And we're always touching tables. So, we're out there, we're out on the floor where we know everybody who comes in every day. And it's a friendly, open environment.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. I think that brings us to the end of our questions, and we're right at a little bit past 2 o'clock. Caitlin, I'm wondering if you could just share with folks how they'll be able to access the webinar information and other resources. And just before doing that, I want to thank all the panelists, Stephanie and Jenny and Nessa, for those great presentations, really informative, really engaging. And so, okay, here we go, right? Caitlin, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, for sure. So we have some contact information here for Peter and for Nessa. They're the 2 main contacts for this project within FINE. And if you look up further in the slide deck, you'll find contact info for Jenny and Stephanie as well. And the slides will be available after the fact. So for anyone who is registered for the webinar, I'll be sending an email to you in the next few days, probably early next week, with a link to the recording and a link to the slides and some other ways you can get involved. So stay tuned for that. The recording will be available via YouTube and also on our Facebook page. You can find us under Farm to Institution New England. A couple of people have been live tweeting, so I'd encourage you to go to Twitter and go to Farm to INST, Farm to Inst, to find us and find those tweets. And I look forward to staying in touch with you all. Thanks so much for joining us today. Any last comments?
I love the cover photo.
Oh yeah, this is from an event we hosted at Unity College last year. This is one of the Unity dining staff members at their farm with some locally grown parsley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
great.
Well,
Thanks.
yeah, go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say thanks to all the panelists and thanks to everyone else who joined in. And please do contact us. We are very interested in staying in touch and hearing more about your stories and working to support this growing network around the region. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.